I was sipping my morning coffee, the steam curling around my fingers, when my phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop. The sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown apartment, glinting off the gold bracelet I never took off. My silk blouse whispered against my skin as I reached for it, a little too deliberately, trying to steady the flutter in my chest. It was a message from my mother. My mother. 3 words on a screen that made my coffee taste bitter. "We need to talk." I stared at them, heart sinking and rising all at once. After years of distance, of quiet victories that no one knew about, here she was, trying to pull me back into a story that wasn't mine to tell. I could almost hear the clatter of pans, the scent of frying oil, the restaurant she and Dad had opened in my name for my sister, the one they never thought I'd discover. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all these years of building myself from nothing, they still assumed I was the girl who would quietly bend. I let the phone rest in my palm, weighing my response. Hurt, yes. Anger, certainly. But beneath it all, a simmering pride. I had survived this before. I had grown beyond it. And now, for the first time in a long while, I felt the thrill of a reckoning forming just beyond my fingertips. I remember the summer I realized I could no longer count on my family to see me. I was 22, fresh out of college, full of hope and trembling with that strange mix of fear and excitement you get when the world suddenly feels like it belongs to everyone else but you. I had returned home, naive and eager, thinking they would support me, maybe even be proud. But pride was never part of their vocabulary for me. "Why aren't you helping your sister?" my mother had snapped one afternoon, the sunlight casting sharp shadows across her face. My hands had been full of freshly folded clothes, but they shook anyway. The lump in my throat made me swallow hard, tasting salt and disappointment all at once. I tried to explain that I was saving, investing in my dream, but my words fell like tiny stones in a well. They didn't hear me. They didn't want to. It stung, the dismissal more than the words themselves. I remember clutching the small silver locket my grandmother had given me on my 18th birthday, pressing it to my chest as if it held the courage I didn't yet feel. "You're stronger than you think," she had whispered in a frail voice that seemed impossibly wise at the time. That locket became my talisman, a reminder that my path didn't have to mirror theirs. I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if breaking away meant losing them, or if staying meant losing myself. I cried alone, the sound muffled by the thin walls of my childhood room. I watched my sister walk past, oblivious, carrying the ease of someone whose world was already mapped out for her. And something inside me hardened, not bitterness, exactly, but resolve. By the end of that summer, I had made a choice. I would build a life on my own terms. Every rejection, every sneer, every "you'll never make it," whispered into my ears became a brick in the foundation of the woman I was determined to become. I closed the door softly behind me that night, locket clutched tight, and for the first time, I felt the thrill of independence and the weight of a reckoning that would one day come. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my sister, not even the few distant relatives who assumed I would stumble or fail. My world became early mornings, late nights, and the relentless hum of ambition. I rented a tiny studio apartment downtown, the kind with paint peeling on the ceiling and a stubborn leak in the bathroom, and I poured every ounce of energy into learning, growing, and proving to myself first that I could rise. It wasn't glamorous. Some nights I ate instant noodles under the glow of my laptop, reviewing contracts, reading financial reports, and sketching out business plans on scrap paper. I learned to navigate the language of investors, the etiquette of high-stakes meetings, the subtle art of asserting value without arrogance. Every misstep became a lesson, every small one a spark that kept me going. Then came Maria, my first mentor. She was a powerhouse, an older woman in the culinary world who ran her own boutique chain of cafes. She didn't coddle me. She challenged me. "You have fire, Lily, but fire alone won't keep a business alive. You need strategy, discipline, and the courage to demand your worth." Her words felt like both a whip and a lifeline. I absorbed them all, learning not just the mechanics of business, but the confidence to stake a claim in a world that had once written me off. Slowly, I began to see results. My first major client came after nights of rewriting proposals until my eyes burned. The first profitable contract felt like a small exhale of relief, the kind that tells you, you're on your way. I celebrated quietly, pouring a glass of wine in my apartment that smelled faintly of paint and ambition. I posted nothing online, shared little with friends. Let them think I was still struggling. Let them imagine me as small. It was a protective veil, a shield against the assumptions I had carried for years. By the time my parents' restaurant had opened in my name, I had built something they couldn't touch. I had partnerships, equity, a team that believed in me. I moved through my days with the grace of someone who had learned that power wasn't loud. It was deliberate, careful, and undeniable. I was still Lily, the same young woman who once clutched a silver locket in her palm, but now I was Lily multiplied, hardened by experience, and softened by the empathy I refused to abandon. Every small victory, every whispered encouragement from Maria, every sleepless night spent on spreadsheets and menus led me here, to a life that was mine entirely. And yet, when I thought of my family using my name, I felt that simmering thrill of reckoning again, the knowledge that soon, everything would come full circle. The doorbell rang just as I was arranging the final set of files on my polished oak desk. My stomach gave a quick flutter, not from nerves exactly, but anticipation. I knew who it was. Before opening the door, my parents and my sister, carrying the familiar mix of expectation and entitlement that had defined our family dynamics for as long as I could remember. I led them into my office, letting them take in the space at their own pace. The walls were adorned with abstract paintings I had collected over the years, each one a quiet victory in taste and choice. Bookshelves lined one side of the room, stacked with business and culinary guides, awards, and journals filled with strategies and dreams once scribbled on napkins. A soft rug covered the hardwood floors, warm underfoot, and the scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, rich and inviting. They paused, mouths slightly open, as their eyes scanned the room. My father's eyebrows lifted. My mother's hands clutched her handbag tighter. My sister, looked around with a flicker of recognition that something was off, something she had never anticipated. I gestured toward the chairs in front of my desk, and we all sat. Silence stretched long enough to feel deliberate, weighted with all the years of assumption and dismissal. And then I spoke. You know the restaurant you opened in my name for my sister? I began, letting the words hang like a fine thread waiting to snap. It's not just in my name anymore. Legally, ethically, and financially, I own it. The contracts, the licensing, everything. You've been operating without authorization, and that's why I brought these. I slid the stack of papers across the desk, cease and desist documents, neatly organized, precise, and final. Their faces transformed in real time. My father went pale, his lips pressing into a tight line. My mother's shoulders sagged, her usual sternness dissolving into disbelief. My sister's jaw dropped, the casual confidence she had carried for years faltering as she finally realized that I had grown into someone untouchable, someone she had never truly understood. I spent years building something real, I continued, my voice calm, but every syllable brimming with authority. You assumed I'd bend, that I'd let my name be used for your convenience. But I didn't. I didn't because my worth is mine alone. And now, if you want to continue in this family business, it will be on my terms. They stared at me, stunned, the words sinking like stones in a silent pond. The room, with its quiet elegance and subtle display of accomplishment, was more than a setting. It was a statement, a testament to everything I had built quietly while they assumed I was invisible. The power shift was palpable. I wasn't the same girl who had folded laundry under my mother's scrutiny, or who had cried over a silver locket clutching hope and fear in equal measure. I was a woman who had earned her voice, her success, and her right to stand tall, and now, finally, they had no choice but to acknowledge it. I let the silence linger for a moment, watching their expressions shift, disbelief melting into apprehension, arrogance giving way to the faintest tremor of guilt. This was the moment I had envisioned for years, the moment the balance of power finally tipped in my favor. And I would wield it carefully, deliberately, with the mix of firmness and compassion I had cultivated through every long night, every struggle, every tiny victory. "You've been given a second chance," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "But it comes with conditions, conditions that reflect accountability, growth, and respect for the lives we all lead." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Conditions?" he asked, almost pleading. "Yes," I said. "You can't just continue old patterns. If you want involvement in this business, or any part of my professional life, you need to meet my standards. No shortcuts, no entitlement, no assumptions that I will cover your mistakes." I turned to my mother, her hands trembling slightly around her handbag. "Mom, you've spent years undermining me without realizing it. You need to genuinely support my sister on her own merit, without dragging my name or influence into her achievements. And you must acknowledge the boundaries I've set. You cannot interfere in decisions I make, not anymore." My sister looked like she wanted to argue, but I held up a hand. "And you, yes, you, Emma, you need to take ownership of your own ambitions. I will not carry the weight of your choices, or shield you from consequences. You have talent, but talent without accountability will never bring respect. Prove to me that you can handle responsibility before you step further into this world I've built." The air was thick with tension, but also with a strange sense of hope. My conditions weren't punishment. They were guidelines for transformation, blueprints for growth that allowed each of them to reclaim integrity and self-respect. I was firm because I cared, because I had endured the consequences of their mistakes, and I would not let them repeat those patterns without accountability. "Every condition I've set is linked to self-growth," I continued. "We will work together, but on terms that honor everyone's potential. I expect honesty, initiative, and respect, for me, for each other, and for the work we do. Fail to meet these, and I will enforce boundaries more strictly. This is not about revenge. It's about building something real, sustainable, and fair." They nodded slowly, each of them absorbing the gravity of my words. I could see the beginnings of comprehension in their eyes, the faintest flicker of understanding that change was necessary. And for the first time, I felt that subtle thrill of satisfaction that comes from reclaiming not just power, but the ability to guide it wisely. I leaned back in my chair, letting the authority of my presence settle over the room. It was a strange, beautiful feeling, the culmination of years of struggle, of quiet perseverance, of turning hurt into strength. The power was mine, yes, but it was tempered with compassion, and it was tied to the hope that we could all emerge better, stronger, and more authentic than we had been before. Weeks passed, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, I began to see the shift I had hoped for. My parents, though still clumsy in their attempts, were learning to respect the boundaries I had set. My father started attending strategy meetings, not to impose, but to genuinely listen. My mother, for the first time, encouraged my sister without tethering her success to my name. And Emma, my sister, stepped into the kitchen of her own ambitions, experimenting, failing, learning, and slowly claiming a confidence I hadn't thought she possessed. I watched all of this from my office, the same space that had once been my sanctuary from their doubt, now a place where the past and present coexisted. My silver locket lay on my desk, catching the morning light. I picked it up, running my fingers over its smooth surface. It had been my talisman in those early days of uncertainty, the quiet reminder that I was capable of building my own destiny. And now, holding it again, I felt the full circle of that journey. The girl who had been dismissed, underestimated, and overshadowed had grown into a woman whose power and compassion could reshape the very family that had once tried to define her limits. I allowed myself a small smile, the kind that carries both relief and quiet triumph. The hurt hadn't vanished entirely, perhaps it never would. But it had been tempered by growth, understanding, and the realization that the world didn't have to be cruel just because it had once been. I was free, and in freeing myself, I had given them the chance to become better versions of themselves. As I closed the locket and set it beside my laptop, I looked out the window at the city skyline, the sunlight glinting off glass towers and reflecting the endless possibilities that lay ahead. The office was quiet now, filled with the soft hum of life and promise. I had fought, I had endured, and I had risen. And in doing so, I had discovered the most profound truth. Strength is not just in claiming what is yours, it's in knowing how to wield it wisely. I turned back to my work, the papers, the contracts, the life I had built, and I whispered to myself, a final declaration that felt like a release. I am no longer defined by their choices. I define myself, and I rise.